Okay, hello everybody. Welcome to our discussion, Voices of Youth in the European Union. We have another speaker joining us today. Her name is Anna, and I'll turn that over to her in a second to give her an introduction. But my name is Natasha. I am the Communications Director for the Global Institute for Youth, and I'll be running our discussion today. And given recent events and the importance of highlighting youth in different spheres all around the world, we decided to bring our recent discussion to Europe. So we're going to be talking about some issues of identity, belonging, kind of travel and work, all the issues affecting young people. And we're looking forward to today's discussion, and we hope you are too. So Anna, do you want to just give a quick introduction about yourself before we get started?
Yeah, absolutely. So, hi everyone. Yeah, this is of course a live recording, so maybe there is not so much possibility for interaction, but also later, if you want to reach out, I'm really happy to have a dialogue of sorts. And well, my name is Anna Saraste, and I'm 26 years old. I come originally from Finland, and I hold a Finnish passport, but I'm currently residing in Berlin, in the German capital. And I have lived basically more than half of my life outside of Finland. I was there also for around 10 years in between. I finished my studies there, but grew up during my childhood in Germany, and basically returned here after my studies, to also kind of get again a bit attached to one side of my identity. I have additionally also lived in Barcelona in Spain for half a year. It was a Erasmus plus study abroad possibility that I used, and which I really liked. It's a European Union program that is offered to upper secondary or higher education students to go and study abroad, which is a really great opportunity and which is growing all the time. So it's also getting more known. People use the opportunity, and especially in terms of learning a language, this was really amazing. Yeah, but when it comes to the European sphere, I think also inherently, because I grew up between two identities and two cultures, I was always very interested in international exchange, and already with 18 I started to volunteer next to my studies. And of course, in a country like Finland, where we have free education and even state subsidies for students, it is also possible to dedicate a part of your time for volunteering. Not all people do it. Some people also prefer to do something else, but for me, this was really important. And since several years already, I'm volunteering in a network called the European Youth Press. It's a network that is not limited to the European Union, but it understands itself as a truly European network. So there are also organizations in Eastern Europe, Eastern Partnership countries, and EU succession countries that are part of the network, and it reaches around 60,000 young media makers. And there I was also first a part of a working committee for the Middle East and North Africa. Then I was leading that committee, and later I was elected to the international board of European Youth Press, where I will also be active still until this November. And this was my first, I think, a truly European experience, to work with people who shared the same professional passion. I have also studied journalism and worked as a journalist, but also really getting to understand for myself, who am I? Where do I come from? What are my values? Because this is something that you will notice really fast when you enter the sphere of intercultural communication. And also for me to understand, because I had always moved around a lot in Central Europe, to also understand what it means to grow up in the Balkans, even in EU countries such as Poland or Romania, which have a very, very different socio-economical background, and where you still have very different problems than you would have in Germany or Finland, or the challenges are different. And maybe one reason why I'm also here today is that I'm working now at the moment for the European Youth Parliament. That is also a European-wide network with national committees, as we call them, in 40 countries. And this is also a volunteering organization where people are, like the most active volunteers are between 14 and around 25 years old. So they're very young. And we're talking about a network that has 3,000 active volunteers that organize 600 events a year that involve 35,000 young people. So it's very big. It has already a history of 30 years in which it has, of course, also professionalized a lot. So it wasn't always this big, but it's still, I'm working with issues that are very close to my heart. So for one, the volunteering part, and for the other, the European exchange and European sphere, because we do deal a lot with issues of European integration, European values, without promoting the European Union. So it's also really a platform for critical thinking, questioning whether things could be done even better. And yeah, I think that's really, really exciting, actually.
Wow, thank you very much for that introduction. Sounds like you're a very busy person and been to a lot of different places. So my first question for you today is, what, in your opinion, are some of the benefits for young people for being part of the European Union?
Well, I think the European Union indeed offers, if you know about them, it offers quite a lot of opportunities to educate yourself and to be mobile. There are indeed these kind of university or higher education exchanges. There are also quite a lot of different pots for funding for youth activities in the European Union. So both inside countries that, as well as mobility projects. There is also critique for these programs. All of them basically fall under Erasmus Plus. Since, well, I nowadays, also having volunteered and so on, I am familiar with how to apply for this kind of funding for an organization, for example, in order to have a mobility project. But this is not something that every young person would know about or that they would study. And sometimes it's also, I mean, these applications are quite long, and it takes some time to prepare them. So I think several youth organizations that deal with these kind of mobility projects, they know about the funds, and they also get funding through the European Union in order to do projects. So so it's both an opportunity, but also sometimes a bit of a challenge. And I think in terms of inclusion, there is still a lot that could be done. The European Union as such, as the kind of organism that governs our countries, is something that is very far away for young people. And this relates to many issues. One of them is that the European Union has big struggles in communicating itself understandably to people outside of Brussels. So it's both a lack of journalists knowing how to report about the European Union, but also the European Union itself doesn't have enough, in my opinion now, enough efforts to also make itself understandable. So it's often perceived as something very bureaucratic, where a lot of money flows to Brussels and Strasbourg, because there's two places where the European Parliament is sitting. And so it sometimes feels quite far away. When indeed, like you could also see now in the Brexit discussion, that a lot of the decisions that are made in Brussels actually affect our daily lives in the European Union, especially in terms of agriculture, and especially in terms of monetary economics. What is less regulated by Brussels are, for example, cultural expenditure or education is all regulated by member states. But I think for any kind of regular, normal person living inside the European Union, there is very little understanding of what it actually does, how it functions, how decisions are made, and how young people can also influence those decisions. So the feeling is also one very much of powerlessness, actually.
Some great points there. I think, I mean, being Canadian, I can certainly relate to the issue of feeling kind of physically removed from, the parliament and where the government actually takes place. We also have such a huge country. It's that physical distance can pose challenges, both in kind of the mentality and actual, physical ability to, maybe go to the parliament itself, meet with people. So that's a really great point. My next question for you is, what do you feel are some of the greatest challenges facing young people across Europe today?
Well, one thing that we can still see quite a lot is actually the consequences of the financial crisis of 2008. So especially the Mediterranean countries, Spain, Italy, Greece, have still very high numbers of youth unemployment. I was living in Spain in 2013, and this was a time when Spain had 60% youth unemployment. So you would have people with PhDs, jobless, looking to find at least something where they could serve as waiters, or it was really hard times, and you could see that there was this lost generation narratives that started to be there, also because people didn't move out anymore from, like, they didn't live on their own anymore, but they stayed with the parents or the grandparents. They started families later. They couldn't, be independent in a way. And the extreme cases that you would have, for example, in Greece, where even suicides, or those rates also went up. So I think youth unemployment is still in 2016, 8 years later, a big challenge in the European Union in general. So that is one thing. I think, it's a tough question. I could also hear already the previous speaker say that that she found the question hard. I think, there's a lot of things, but one thing that again relates to the job market is that there is very little stable jobs. So especially in creative branches like journalism, but also other branches, you will have a lot of short contract jobs. And the way our parents still used to enter one company and work there for 40, 50 years, and this is just not happening anymore. So the most probable thing that will happen to you is that you graduate, you go and work first for a half a year as a trainee somewhere, then you do another traineeship, then you maybe get somewhere for 8 months, then somewhere 12 months. So you're all the time kind of in this loop of looking for another job if you're not jobless. So this is definitely a big challenge. I mean, people definitely are more mobile. They speak more languages. There is also opportunities to go abroad. There is opportunities to go educate yourself more in courses, etc. But also there is quite few opportunities for a really stable job, and somehow I think life also because of this has become less predictable. You have to be also nowadays more inclined to do or go wherever the next opportunity takes you, and this makes life more uncertain, of course.
Yes, great points. And I know the scarcity of stable and long-term jobs is unfortunately not a problem that's isolated to Europe. That's certainly an international problem at the moment. So my third question is more of a personal one, and it's, do you feel a positive sense of belonging and identity to Europe, and in what ways?
I do feel a sense of belonging, but to places and not necessarily to this continent. There is an excellent TED Talk that I always recommend, and which I think more and more also young people can relate to, because we tend to move across borders, or our parents did, and that's why we grow up with multiple identities. The speaker is called Taye Selassie, and if you ever want to look it up, the talk is called "Don't Ask Me Where I'm From, Ask Me Where I'm Local," and there is a lot of truth in what she says in those 20 minutes, because indeed, I think also many Europeans are more like multi-local than really multinational. And as someone who grew up outside of her, yeah, you could say passport country, I have never been comfortable with nationalism or the concept of nationalism. That, of course, now in some parts of Europe is actually very strong. So living in Barcelona, I could feel it, that people felt very Catalan. Or in Scotland, you will also have a very strong national sentiment, especially amongst young people. And I think in the way that Taye Selassie describes it, I also feel like I belong to Berlin. Berlin is an amazing place. If you guys haven't been, you have to travel here. I also belong to the woods in Finland and the summer cottage there. And I do belong also maybe a tiny bit to Barcelona and the mentality of people there and the friendliness and the openness. And it's also very important to understand that Europe as a continent is very, very diverse, not just because of the different languages that we speak, but even like some of the nations here, similar to the African continent as well, they are quite young. I mean, we feel like Germany is a concept that is a very strong concept. We know what is Germany and it has a strong economy. But in a way, Germany was also created 100 years ago. Before that, it was also different monarchies. And the concept of Germany as we know it today is in a way a made-up one. So someone coming from Berlin or from Munich or from Cologne or from the German countryside, from Brandenburg, which is very, very poor, or from Stuttgart, where you have all the big car companies like Mercedes Benz. These are very different parts, and the identities of these people are not comparable with each other, sometimes not even the language, because they speak such a strong dialect. So I think even inside countries, you will have people who just from their customs, from their culture are very different. Also, when it comes to being conservative or liberal, there is or religious or not religious, there is a lot of variety. So that's why also I would not say that I come from Finland in the sense that I don't know what it's like to grow up in Lapland, where there is one person per every 10 square kilometers. It's a very sparsely populated area that has 3 months of the year only sun, because it's so close to the polar or it's over the above the polar circle, and 3 months of the year it has only night. And just growing up with that, it must be crazy. I mean, and I cannot know what it is like. I didn't grow up there, so I would rather say I came from Helsinki or from the south. So I mean, in that sense, to conclude, I belong to places here, and very strongly so. And I think there is places like Berlin that are very international, where people also come and go all the time. So no one here is originally from Berlin, and that's why it's also so easy to make it your home.
Yeah, those are some great points about kind of the national identity and, that sense of belonging for us young people who move around a lot. I'm definitely gonna have to look up that TED Talk for myself, and I'll be sure to share it on our social media for anybody who's watching and might be interested. Our next question is, how can young people make sure that Europe's future is still based on its core values and strengths?
Well, I think at the European Youth Parliament, we would say that it's a lot based on dialogue. So if we don't talk with each other about what those core values and strengths are, and also what the challenges are, then I think we will be lost in our own kind of how do you call it, speculations. So what the European Youth Parliament, for example, does is to bring young people together in these events that we call sessions. And here people will always tackle some certain issue, for example, security policies or environmental policies. We take a real world challenge, like a conflict, or the need to shift to renewable energy, and have young people talk about it and see also. And I think in this dialogue, what happens is that you start to understand, yes, yourself and the other culture, but you start to also understand what are the things that you have in common. And that's also the basis of really building and sustaining some core values. What those core values are, I think, is also a good question, because of course the European Union asks its member states to follow the Copenhagen criteria. These have to do with the rule of law, press freedom, etc. And every country that tries to enter the European Union has to also fulfill those criteria. And I think indeed those will offer you already quite a good understanding of what European values are. At the same time, this pluralism that for a long time was seen as a strength is now rather challenged by the recent rise of populist politics in several countries, also in my country, in Finland, but also in big countries like France, like Britain, also in several countries. I would say that you have political movements that are very afraid and that demonize that pluralism, that also reflect the concern of many Europeans for what open borders actually mean, and also when it comes to accepting refugees now, for example, to our countries, there is a lot of these anti-sentiments that didn't used to be there, that are partly caused also by financial problems, financial challenges, fears that our economies won't be able to sustain everyone who comes. But I think this is something that we definitely also as young people need to counter, like in that dialogue, to see where those fears come from, why populist, nationalist, right-wing sentiments now are on the rise, and what we can do against it in order also to defend those core values that Europe has been built on.
There we go. Sorry, my internet was just being cranky there for a second. I'm going to move on to our next question now, which is kind of a fun one. If you were the president of Europe, what would you do? And how might your actions help young people across the union to reach their potential, whether that's personal, professional, academic, social? What might you do?
Wow. Well, I think I would definitely continue the Erasmus Plus program as it stands, because it's a good mobility program. I think it can still be extended more also to countries in neighboring reaches of the European Union that now still have far less opportunities than countries inside the union have, and make it more inclusive. So also consider that some young people come from lower socioeconomic backgrounds, from minorities, that they need more support for going abroad than from other countries. There has been a very funny initiative in Germany recently, where a group of young Europeans, they call them, is demanding to have free interrail passes for everyone who turns 18 inside the Union. Interrail here means to take the train and to basically drive around for 1 month to different cities. And now you pay also quite little for this Interrail. I think if you're under 25, it costs you, not too much, I think €200 or something. Here it's, affordable. But to really have this free Interrail pass so that you would also go abroad, explore different cities and their cultures and their people, I think that would be really amazing. So I could also advocate for that. On the more serious side, I think there can so much still be done in terms of equal opportunities, in terms of human rights as well. So we still have quite a lot to do for the LGBTI community, for example. I mean, there's also in terms of press freedom, where I have done most of my advocacy. We have even European Union member states that don't really follow good criteria for press freedom. And I think in a way what I said in the beginning, that the European Union seems very far away and people don't understand it and it doesn't communicate itself well enough, I think to make that more transparent for young people and also make it transparent what are their chances of participating and influencing the European Union would be very, very crucial. So creating that kind of understanding while you're still at school and while you study would be, I think, very important. So that could be a start, and then of course, see that people have the chance to meet people who are different and have chances to work with them and to enjoy what this continent has to offer.
Cool. I'm going to ask one quick follow-up question based on what you said. You're talking about transparency in both kind of what the EU does and opportunities to get involved. So I was just wondering, how did you first get involved or kind of learn about the Erasmus Plus program and the other kind of European things you talked about? And was that a challenge for you, or can you talk about your experience with that?
Yeah, well, Erasmus Plus is something that I heard about at my university, and I think it's the University of Tampere, so it's a smaller university in Finland. And for that university, actually, it has been very important to be part of the Erasmus Plus network, since also a lot of international students this way come to Tampere, which is a town of 200,000 people. So I think the university is doing good in communicating about it and introducing it to students and telling them that this is an opportunity that you can have. And so, yeah, indeed, I think the educational institutions carry their responsibility of making it more known. For the volunteering part, however, that was really just what I found out myself by looking at opportunities to go abroad. I think for different youth programs, also depending on what your interests are, whether it's then environmental activism or human rights or other things, you can also follow news sites and find out about training programs, exchanges. So, but this requires quite a lot of your own active, just being active and looking into those opportunities. And that's what I did. I found out about one event that was organized for young journalists in Brussels. I applied there, and it was organized by the European Youth Press, and I found it so amazing that I then started to volunteer there. And similar to your organization, that is also very online based. So most of the communication really relies on Hangout, Skype, using emails, Facebook groups, etc. And that's a whole, I think, like online ecosystem that you have to also take for yourself if you want to do that. So yeah, I think there is indeed, it's good to inform yourself and see where you can find that kind of information. And then what I'm now doing is also just encouraging a lot of people who I know to apply. When I know that there is something, I I sent them over to opportunities and try to get them also to go, because for me this was a life-changing path that I took at some point.
Awesome. And I know sometimes, people will find an opportunity, but they're a little bit unsure. So I'm glad that you're kind of giving other people the encouragement and push that sometimes what they need to go ahead and apply for something and join something new. Awesome. So my next question, I guess we just basically just talked about it. But how can young people learn more about the European Union?
Well, there is also quite nice materials by the European Union if you follow them on Twitter, on Facebook. If you, I mean, also on the website, you can kind of educate yourself by going there. Also on Twitter, they really make an effort in communicating different languages, being very reachable, etc. So I think they do make an effort in this sense. You can also join events that are organized by the European Commission. There's, for example, the European Youth Event that takes place twice in a legislative period, so twice every 5 years. And that gathers around 7,000 youth activists to Strasbourg, which is also a really nice event. I mean, normally what happens there is a lot of workshops and recommendations are brought out to certain topics, and these are then distributed to the MEPs, the members of the European Parliament. So that is also definitely a way to experience the European Union. There is also internship opportunities with the European Union and its institutions. Depending on if you study law, you can go to the European Court, or you can go to European Commission, or also to the Council of Europe, which of course has a bigger scope with 47 countries. And the European Union has representations in all its countries, and also the Eastern Partnership countries and the EU accession countries, normally in the capitals, where you can also inform yourself, where there is discussion events and so on. There is also there have been some initiatives for like youth-led European media that also reports on the European Union that are definitely worth checking out. There's, for example, Pandeia. It's I think the address is pandeia.eu exactly. It's a reporter network led by young people. Similar is Café Babel, which is published in 6 languages, and these also report on not necessarily the European Union, but European issues as well, in a very interesting way and from a youth perspective. So that's also definitely worth checking out. So I think, although, I mean, a comprehensive kind of professionally led media that would explain more the European Union as such is at the moment is not there. There are some initiatives that try to do that.
Yeah, it definitely sounds like there's lots of ways to kind of find out what's going on and get involved. So that's good to hear. Our next question is, again, we've already kind of touched on this, but maybe you can elaborate a bit more. What are some of the initiatives or projects that you've been involved in which represent the great youth-focused work that's taking place across the European Union? Maybe you could talk about one that was the most impactful or meaningful for you.
Well, at the moment, I'm actually focusing on a project around the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe, the OSCE, where Canada is also one of the member countries, or the participating countries. It's 57 countries. And yeah, so the OSCE this year is chaired by Germany. And that's why also the European Youth Parliament is having a couple of these events of sessions that focus on OSCE issues. And here it's also very interesting because OSCE, I mean, in a way, it's a very interesting organization also because it has both the United States and Russia participating in it. And it understands itself as a platform for dialogue. So it doesn't, I mean, there is also some, for example, monitoring missions like now in Ukraine that the OSCE issues, but mostly it's really this place where people come together to talk and to understand each other. But nobody knows about the OSCE. So if the European Union is bad at communicating itself to the people, the OSCE is even worse. So that's really, no one knows about the OSCE. And so the aim of the project that I'm also now coordinating is to really, get people to know what is the OSCE, what does it work on, what are the issues it tackles at the moment, also during Germany's chairmanship. And so we're doing two international forums. One was already in Vienna, and the other one will be in 2 weeks in Belgrade. And in these forums, we have 150 youngsters who come together, also Canadians, people from the US, from Central Asia, and then Europe, of course. And they basically debate, for example, if Europe should have its own army, also surveillance, so how much intelligence should be shared across borders. There is something about post-conflict reconciliation in the Balkans as well. And all of these topics are also formulated by these 16 to 26-year-olds and chaired by young people. And what's really amazing, I think, about these events are that everything from, organizing the venues, finding the name tags, organizing the meals, booking places, up to the program of, what are the topics that are discussed in the committees, leading the committee work, formulating resolutions. All of this is done by young people for young people. So I'm rather, communicating with the OSCE and keeping them on the loop, and then also training the organizers, but they are really the ones to do all the hard work. And to see these young people dedicate so much time to organizing it and making really amazing stuff happen is, for me, really rewarding. So how exactly it happens, I think it just takes a lot of time from a lot of people, and just the belief that they're doing something important. And then on the way, they get some training in the skills, and that's really, the combination is really, really amazing. So I'm really grateful to do what I'm doing at the moment.
Yeah, sounds like there's some fantastic work going on there. And I have one quick question to follow up on that. You mentioned one of your goals and tasks there is to share more about the work you're doing. And is there anything specifically you're kind of focusing on, or that you found is successful to share this work with young people, or maybe other things you think need to be done for example, the EU or other youth organizations to better share their work? I guess with everybody, not just young.
Can you maybe repeat the question? Hi.
There we go. We're back. Sorry.
Can you maybe repeat the question? Sorry.
Yes. I think that was my internet's fault. So just following up on what you said about one of your jobs or one of your goals there being sharing the work that you do and making sure that people know about it. Is there anything that you're specifically doing, or that you found is successful in sharing that with a broader audience?
Well, I'm also a journalist, so I'm used to what it's like to be in a newsroom and receive 10,000 press releases a day, and also how to pick what's interesting. And I think what I'm personally trying to share with the young people that I work with, is how to do successful press work. So we go through their communication strategies, if they have them, or if they don't, then we create them together, and look at how it's also realistic to have good coverage of their activities, because in the end, for many of them in their countries, press coverage also means building a public image of their organization and of them as volunteers, and then in the long run kind of finding supporters, finding funders. And so the long-term effects of effective image building are very positive. So yeah, I mean, and since they are, I mean, you have to imagine people who are now 18, 19, they have grown up as social media natives. So they definitely know how social media works. They are amazing with filming stuff with their mobile phones, and kind of the tech savviness is on a different level than people my age already. So this 7 or 8 years in between have already made a huge difference for these people. And I think this is really a global phenomenon in a way. But then it's more about what I then focus on with them is storytelling, how to highlight interesting things about their work. And in the end, many times it just ends up with this by young people, for young people idea, because I mean, this does happen in some other organizations as well, but in a way it's also very unique to see so engaged people who are really so dedicated and professional as well in what they do and how they do it, and manage their own finances and do their project reporting better than many adults in other organizations. And so I think, yeah, this is really what I've been focusing on a lot. And then we, of course, also talk about reporting and the quality of a project, how to measure that, etc. So very kind of classical project management skills as well.
Sounds awesome. So we're up down to our final question now, and that is, are there any experiences or lessons you'd like to share from these initiatives and your personal experiences that you feel other young people might like to hear about?
I think for me, it has been, yeah, as I said, the biggest kind of contribution to also my professional skills to volunteer. And I think even if you are from a country where it's difficult to make the time to volunteer, where it's harder to sustain yourself in other ways, it's definitely worth trying to do it. Also because just you meet the most amazing people when volunteering. It's really like that. My best friends I met volunteering in other countries. My partner I met volunteering. And I know and there is always amazing initiatives that you can join that are credible, that really, you know, try to make changes, but they really also have goals and they have outputs, and that are, you know, just getting there, that really, you know, motivate you to do also other things in your life. And while you're kind of changing the world on the side, you also, well, then make acquaintances, make friends, also learn professional skills. And now, I mean, after having attended myself those opportunities, of course, I want to give others the opportunity. So I try to create projects where others can go and experience the same that I did. And yeah, I think, you know, if you are, for example, in Uganda, I know of a really interesting project that was about, it's called Not in My Country, I think, where you can report corruption, also sextortion at universities and so on. And I think these are the exact things that happen when people just start to push for a better world. And, you know, you just have to find and it can be, you know, something that you do on the scale of your community, your exact surroundings, or it can be something you do just with your family, with your friends, but it can also be something that you do on a European scale, but it has to be something that motivates you. And I would just, you know, wherever you are, just try volunteering, because there is nothing that can give you that experience in your professional life or personal life otherwise.
Awesome. I know volunteering is so important. I think a lot of young people share that same sentiment that you've shared. So that's the end of our discussion today. Thank you so much, Anna, for joining us. You shared some great responses and experiences and words of wisdom for our young people. We're really looking forward to sharing this discussion. And thank you to our viewers for watching this today. Be sure to check out our other Voices of Youth in the European Union discussions and videos available on our YouTube channel. And thanks again, Anna, for joining us.
Sure, take care and have a good day.